Hello, welcome everyone to the Marr Show. Who here remembers the very first episode of the Marr Show?
Go away!
Okay.
Screw you to Mel Gibson's pants!
Yeah, if you remember that, it was an awkward time, was it not? Okay, I'm not gonna go bashing my old videos like every other YouTuber does when they get back into old videos, and even though the video hasn't aged the best, I'm not ashamed of my first episode at all. Every YouTuber has their old beginnings. They're gonna try out stuff that may work or stuff that they'll change as they go on with the show, and I still had a lot of fun finally being able to make my own review series. Keep in mind, at the time, I was still making TTTES, and the Thomas Comedies was brand new. So this was a new area I was getting into when making YouTube videos. I was inspired heavily by some of my favorite YouTube content creators like JonTron and Nostalgia Critic, that I wanted to finally take my long dream of having my own review series and putting it into action. I remember it being so much fun to make, not to mention, it was the perfect opportunity for me to finally talk about one of my favorite childhood VHS tapes that I grew up with, that being the Trollies. For the longest time, I thought I was the only kid in the entire world that grew up with the Trollies. Whenever I talk about it with some of my friends at school, they would be confused, thinking I was talking nonsense, but I loved watching the Trolley tapes. They were so much fun. I always enjoyed seeing RT, Cherry, Olaf, and all the other Trollies, and just seeing all the stuff that they do and being able to sing along with them. For those who don't know what the Trollies are, how can I put this? Oh, I know. Do you remember those old 90s VHS tapes of sing-alongs? You know, like the Disney sing-along tapes, or the We Sing series for that matter? Think of it like that, only here it's with a bunch of trolls. Flea in particular, RT, Cher, and Olaf have their own radio station called WTROLL. Most of the time they usually cover popular songs, such as Don't Worry, Be Happy, Kokomo, and one of my favorite songs ever, Old Time Rock and Roll. Actually, a funny story here. Back when I was in kindergarten, in the gym teacher would play music as we went around the gym, and they played a song, and even though the lyrics are Old Time Rock and Roll, in the tape, they say Old Time Rock and Troll. You know, because trolls, rock and roll, puns, all that stuff. And for the longest time, I thought the song was literally rock and troll instead of rock and roll. Until one of my friends pointed out it was an embarrassing time, but it's fun to get back at. To some people, these tapes may be dated and kind of silly, but I love watching these tapes, and heck, to be fair, I think the Trollies kind of inspire me to my favorite type of music that I listen to today. There exists 3 tapes of the Trollies that were released in the early 90s. First you got the regular radio sing-along that most people probably remember, and then you got the Christmas tape that was released a few years later, but the tape that I'm gonna talk about and the one that I remember the most is the second one, the Trollies All-New Musical Adventure. I remember watching the second tape the most as a kid. While I still enjoyed the first radio sing-along and the Christmas one was alright, I remember the second one being very different compared to the other 2 tapes. It had a different tone and atmosphere and being more adventurous, as the title will put it. Sure, there were songs, mostly parody songs of like Love Train, We Will Rock You, and other songs like that. But this one, it didn't feature a whole lot of songs compared to the other 2 tapes, but was more adventurous and more exciting and had a very different tone and atmosphere compared to the other 2 tapes that really intrigued me, that even to this day, after years and years of watching it or having seen it for so long, I still remember so many scenes and getting the chill of some of the scenes of how they play. So why am I going back to the Trollies even though I reviewed it all the way back for my first episode? Mostly due to nostalgia. When I reviewed the Trollies back in 2012, that was the last time that I watched this tape, so it's been a long while, even though the memories of all the scenes and the songs are still ingrained in my subconscious from watching it so many times as a kid. And I figure since I'm doing the show in a much better format that makes me feel comfortable, that I'm more myself, not forcing jokes in every single scene and all that, I figured why not go back and revisit the Trollies All-New Musical Adventure. So with that said, let's get ready to rock and troll! Sorry, I had to do that. But before I do, I want to talk about something that I discovered literally a week ago before I filmed this review. Now for a while, I've been hoping that there was a DVD release of the Trollies, maybe have the footage fixed up or something like that, and literally I found on Walmart.com for 14 bucks, I found this, an official DVD release of the Trollies. They also have a DVD copy of the regular radio sing-along. Now even though the cover itself looks cheaply made, heck, there's a lot of weird Photoshop mistakes that are in it, the quality of the DVD itself actually works pretty well, and for 14 bucks it's not that bad. The only thing that kind of threw me off about it was that the audio levels for the DVD is very hit and miss. Sometimes it's really soft and sometimes it's very loud.
It's time to say bye. With this video camera and microphone, you'll become my spy. It's time to say bye. With this video camera and microphone, you'll become my spy.
But for 14 bucks, it's not that bad. I know a lot of people probably say it's a bootleg, but again, I found it on Walmart.com. You can also get it on the Best Buy website, Barnes & Noble, so it's like an official DVD release, even though packaging-wise, it looks homemade a little bit. But still, if you don't have the VHS tape or VHS player, getting the DVD is a good buy, even though the volume is a little bit wonky. But then again, this is an old, early 90s VHS tape that they probably ported over to DVD. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and just use footage from my VHS tape, as I just think the quality looks just slightly better in my opinion. So in this tape, we see the lovely return of RT, Cherry, Olaf, and the other Trollies, but we also get introduced to a batch of new Trollies known as the Trouble Trollies. Unlike the regular cast, who like to have fun, play, be friendly to one another, these guys don't like to have fun at all. They are mean and, well, yeah, they're mean. They're Trouble Trollies for a reason. Which is weird considering in the back they have a poster that says fun is for wimps. But yet, if they enjoy causing mischief and causing others not to have fun, aren't they having fun in return? The Trouble Trollies are as follows. We got Butch and Bully, the twins, Gump, the inventor, Buck, the best character on the VHS tape, as well as a very friendly Trouble Trolley who's probably misunderstood. And then you got the leader, Toady Trolley, a villain who's pretty entertaining, as well rhymes every single sentence.
There will be no break. There will be no rest. That room is going to be prison for a very special guest.
Their plan is to take over Trolleyland and cause their own mischief all about, and make sure the Trolleys don't have any fun at all. How are they gonna do this? By stealing the sun, as the regular Trolleys are afraid of the dark. This may sound kind of silly a bit to steal the sun, it sounds incredibly illogical, but once you take a look at how creepy the sun is, you'll be wanting to have the sun kidnapped. It kind of freaked me out as a kid. Heck, seeing planets with faces always scared me as a kid. I don't know why, it's some weird phobia I have. And of course, Toady steals the sun, which I am all up for. But Buck has a change of heart and helps the Trolleys take the sun back and save Trolleyland. And that's pretty much the basic plot of the Trolleys all-new musical adventure. It can be a bit silly and confusing seeing Toady Trolley kidnapping the sun with a blanket and him destroying the entire ecosystem of the entire planet, but you don't really care about that, as the imagination in this tape I thought was pretty fun. It's just fun getting to see them planning out a basic plot of trying to steal the sun and trying to take over Trolleyland by using fear. And speaking of Trouble Trolleys, they are the most interesting part of the tape. That's not to say the regular Trolleys aren't awful, they're fun and they have some interesting humor jokes in them. But compared to the Trouble Trolleys, it makes the regular gang look kind of bland a little bit, being all happy and nice, even though they do like to cut up with one another and have some fun. But the Trouble Trolleys are a little bit more interesting. With this being their first appearance, you get intrigued to see how everything goes about. Heck, seeing the parts of them putting their plan together is really interesting, and it's also fun for the viewer to figure out little hints as to what Toady's plan is gonna be, even though sometimes it can be pretty obvious. In fact, the two characters that stood out to me were Toady Trolley and Buck. Toady Trolley being a pretty entertaining villain. Sure, I know there's some people that can't stand villains that rhyme constantly, but it never bothered me, and sometimes his rhymes can be kind of interesting in the dialogue play. Not to mention, I think he has one of my favorite villain laughs in all of media. And as for Buck, he's very kind-hearted. Sure, he's a Trouble Trolley, but he's, well, friendly. He's not as mean or even as devious as the other Trouble Trolleys are. And maybe he's a bit confused trying to figure out who's a good friend and who's not. And when he sees the Trollies having fun, playing together, and helping each other out, he has a change of heart. Sure, we do see him go back in the Trouble Trolley Mountain being polka dotted because Trouble Trolleys hate the sunlight, causing a purple rash that spreads to your... well, it makes it hard to sit down. But Buck, I will admit, it's pretty fun. I love seeing Buck develop, realizing who's a good friend and who's not, and helping the Trolleys free the sun, even though he's creepy. Heck, it gets really terrifying when we do the close-up shots, where he's trapped in the door. It just creeped me out. Then again, the puppet always kind of freaked me out, but at least he's not as terrifying as the sun from Timmy the Tooth. Scary. But yeah, the Trouble Trolleys can be interesting, but what makes this tape different compared to the first radio sing-along as well as the Christmas one? Even though the Christmas sing-along came after the second tape, it definitely plays a little bit more similarly to the radio sing-along, having a lot more songs and not feeling as adventurous compared to the second one. Which, yeah, that's true. Through the first half of the tape, you only get to hear 2 songs. I mean, yeah, I guess you could play Flea if you want to count where the sun comes out, but compared to songs that were replayed from the first one in here, you only hear 2 original songs in the first half, and then once we see the Trolleys in the dark, we get a bit more musical upbeat, as the tape focuses more on the Trouble Trolleys planning out to steal the sun. And it feels a lot more adventurous instead of feeling like a slice of life kind of way as the first tape was. Not to mention, in terms of atmosphere and tone, this tape is drastically different. It feels a lot more darker. I'm not gonna say it's super scary or anything or super dark. Then again, I know when I watched this tape for the first time, keep in mind this one has the first tape and the second one bundled together, after the end credits of the first radio sing-along, you're like, yeah, it's fun, so happy, upbeat. And then as the credits ends, and then you see the Trouble Trolley Mountain for the first time, it's drastically different. In fact, to be fair, Trouble Trolley Mountain looks pretty cool. I love the miniature sets that they made that makes it feel grand and mysterious. The base layout always looked pretty cool. Not to mention, I would personally love to have a little die-cast model of Toadie's flying machine. It looks extremely awesome. I love the little organ scenes on the ship, and it just looks so cool. Although, even after all this time of watching this tape, I'm still gonna have to ask, what's with the pig nose? What does it do for the ship? Does it keep the engine from hogging up? I don't care, I'm proud of that one. And the music itself, I think, are pretty good. And I do like how they do parody the real songs by adding lyrics to the situation. Like as they sing We Will Rock You, it's about trying to free the sun from the giant gate. So overall, I do have a lot of fun memories with the second tape, as I love the different atmosphere and tone, especially in the first half of the tape, and I love the adventurous tone of it. I also love the Trouble Trolleys, a lot of great writing that that carries kind of continuing from the first one to here. Though I guess there are a few things that watching it again, I did kind of notice a little bit. Not anything that destroys the tape. I'm not gonna say it's like the greatest thing ever made, even though it's a nostalgic childhood of mine, but there are a few things I did notice that I guess kind of toned me off a little bit. For one, the puppetry. And the puppetry isn't bad. Heck, the trolley puppets actually look pretty cool. But I did notice a few little goofs here and there. For one, if you look at the footage of the puppetry's mouth, you could tell that the puppeteers are recording from a pre-recorded session, meaning the puppeteers are not voicing them like now, but instead they're recording from a pre-recorded dialogue from the voice actors. This isn't bad, but it can sometimes be annoying, and you can definitely tell where sometimes they messed up on the timing of when the lips are supposed to speak.
One more time!
Was not. You were too. I was
You
not.
were.
And there's a few times when the puppeteer for Olaf, you can see the glove arm for Olaf being shown in a couple places. And then there's a few questionable stuff in this tape, like world building. I think that's probably the best thing to describe the second Trollies tape. It builds the world up in Trolleyland, giving a lot more detail to the Trolleys being afraid of the dark, as well as the Trouble Trolleys being afraid of sunlight and all. But there's a few other minor stuff that seems questionable, like the Jelly Belly Trolley Express train. And even though I love the love train scene, it feels weird to have a train that flies around a track, even though on the cover we see the train running on regular tracks. It definitely feels kind of out of place. Not to say it's not awful, I enjoyed it, but looking back, it seems kind of weird to have a flying train in Trolley Land. And then there's one minor part in the VHS tape when we're watching that always kind of confused me as a kid, and that's this.
That's great, Buck, but trolleys can't see in the dark the way you can.
And we can't cross the desert where the gemstone genies have their magical oasis.
Gemstone genies. That probably would have been interesting to see, but that's the only time we ever hear mention of gemstone genies. Heck, in the Christmas sing-along tape, which is a follow-up from this tape, there's no mention of the Jelly Belly Trolley Express train, no mention of the sun, heck, not even mention the gemstone genies. So I guess they were trying to like build a world up to future tapes, even though these are the only Flea tapes that I know of that were ever released. And it feels weird to have these weird world building stuff that feels kind of out of place. I'm not saying the train idea wasn't bad, but seeing the train flying high in the sky feels kind of weird a little bit, and adding some weird details such as the gemstone genies just feels weird a little bit. But those are minor complaints. The puppetry is still good, not the best, but still good, and the world building I appreciate even though some of them still doesn't add up. But probably the thing that I remember most from this tape was the message of the story. You see, the regular Trolleys are terrified of the dark, which is why Toadie thought it was a great idea to kidnap the sun, using fear for the Trolleys to surrender against his will. But Olaf sings a beautiful song called A Different Light, showing to not be afraid of the dark and there's nothing there that's gonna hurt you.
A different light can change the way you look at things. A different light can alter what you see.
This tape actually kind of helped me not to be afraid of the dark. I mean, I am still just a little bit, especially if I'm alone in the house or something, but it helped me not to be afraid of the dark, because I remember being young and having the TV on playing Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network to make sure I had some form of light when I was asleep, and this tape helped me a little bit not to be afraid of the dark. It's a beautiful song as well, especially the guy who voiced as Olaf has a beautiful singing voice that's very calm and nurturing. And heck, to be fair, the message, A Different Light, can also mean another message as well. We see Buck changing sides after seeing the Trolleys being helpful and kind of friendly, realizing maybe Toadie isn't like the best friend, being misunderstood as to what a friend is, and after seeing the regular Trolleys, is seeing things in a different light. And yes, I know I'm deep and heavily into this, but I think those are the two messages with A Different Light that I got out of it that I think makes it a great tape in my opinion. It's not anything super amazing like Citizen Kane level. Why am I comparing to Citizen Kane? It's not anything like Fraggle Rock material or anything, but for me it's very personal for the message as well as the cool atmosphere and tone in the tape. So while there's a few minor things within this tape that did get me off guard, such as some of the confusing world building aspects, the sun is creepy, but that's just me having a phobia of planets with faces, and then some of the puppetry, even though it's good, there's a few small little goofs here and there that may catch some viewers' eye, but other than that, I still love the second Trollies tape. I still have fond memories of the first tape and the Christmas one, but the second tape I will always remember for the theme of not being afraid of the dark and seeing things in a different light, the awesome set design and cool atmosphere that the tape created, and just the imagination that goes into it. It's such a fun tape. I know some people will say it's a bit campy and a bit cheesy at times, but there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy the cheesiness and all that. It's a fun musical adventure that I think if kids watch it today might get invested in as well. If you could somehow find a VHS tape or heck the now recently discovered DVD copy of it, I say pick it up. I really enjoyed it. Then again, I may be blind by nostalgia, but looking at it and seeing a lot of stuff that makes me have a better appreciation for it, I just think it's good. It's my childhood buddy. And that's all the time we have for today, folks. So in the comment section below, if you grew up with the Trolleys or remember them, let me know. It's always fun to see people talk about the Trolleys, as again, I felt like I was the only person in the world that grew up with the Trolleys, but seeing the internet, there's a lot of people that grew up with them, have fun memories, so I'm happy I'm not a loner. And hey, there's still 2 other Trolley tapes, the radio sing-along and then the Christmas sing-along, so if you want me to check those out, want me to review them later on the show, you never know, and I would be more than happy to talk about them and so on. And yeah, pretty much this was an excuse for me to remake my very first episode, as I wanted to try some different stuff and see how it will turn out in the format that I'm doing now, being myself and not forcing gags left and right. I think it turned out pretty well, so if you want to check out the very first episode, it's still uploaded. I'm not going to delete it, as I'm still proud of making it, even though it's not lived up to the test of time, I think, but not all first videos are. So you let me know what you guys think of this re-review and any memories you have of the Trollies. Thank you guys for watching this. God bless you, and I will see you all in the next Marr Show episode. Bye bye!